And God is with Abraham in this journey. And Abraham continues. Things are going well, except that the whole having children thing isn't happening. And he keeps worrying about this. And his wife, Sarah, keeps worrying about this because she's not having children. And so at some point, there we go, pardon me. At some point, he has to, Sarah decides to do something about this. And so she says to Abraham, well, you know, since I'm not having children, you can take my servant girl and have children with her, because apparently this was a thing they did back then, and probably still in some cultures today, but certainly not ours. But anyway, so this is Sarah's plan B. Hagar is going to have a child. So Abraham does what he's told, because Abraham always does what he's told. Abraham is like Joe obedient in every situation he meets. So he does what he's told, and Hagar becomes pregnant. And this involves a sort of change in status for Hagar, because Hagar is, in one sense, still the servant of Sarah, but in another sense, she becomes a secondary wife to Abraham. Again, another thing that people did in those days don't do here anymore. And right, because she's going to become the mother of Abraham's firstborn, is she a secondary wife or is she now primary wife? And Sarah is not impressed with this new idea that has popped into Hagar's head, and so kicks her out. One of the things we don't know in any of this is whether Hagar actually wants a child. Nobody asks her. And this is an interesting parallel with the Mary story, because we also don't know if Mary actually wants a child. She certainly doesn't want a child yet. And she isn't expecting a child yet, because, you know, she's a virgin, and that sort of, you know, one follows on the other most of the time. So we have these two women, and now scholars, of course, right, and pastors and preachers and priests have throughout the centuries have assumed that both Hagar and Mary want children, because they've all been guys, and guys get told that all women want children. True mostly, I suppose. Certainly not everybody, though. There's no reason to assume that, except sort of, you know, chances are. But anyway, Hagar is now out in the wilderness. And God's messenger comes to Hagar and announces that she's going to have a child, except that she already knows this, but also sends her back. And this is where the story gets difficult, because we probably all know horror stories of women leaving abusive situations and then having someone send them back. Oh no, you have to go back into that situation. And most of the time, those are not good stories. And Hagar knows what her problem is. Her problem is entirely Abraham and Sarah's fault. Someone could do something about this, but nobody is. Sarah could change things. She doesn't. Abraham could intervene. He doesn't. Hagar herself is basically passive. She has no power in this situation except the power to leave. Leaving, in some sense, was illegal. She was somebody's property, but she did it anyway. And it's not an easy choice for her, because let's face it, Abraham was her survival. So Hagar in this story is alone. She's been alone in some sense, though, the whole story. She has people around her, but in terms of allies, she has none. So the messenger comes and sends her back and gives her this, I don't know, is it a blessing for the child? He will be a wild ass of a man, and he's going to be fighting all of his life, and everyone's going to be fighting against him. Wow, that's quite a blessing. Thank you very much. Right? I mean, if someone had come to you, right? Claire, if someone had come to you and said that you were going to give birth to a daughter and she was going to be a wild ass of a girl and everybody was going to hate her and she's going to be fighting all of her life, you'd go, thanks, right? At best, or go away, send me another messenger, someone with good news. But maybe, right? Maybe this is a blessing. You see, the natural assumption in that society would have been that Hagar is going to go back, give birth to a son, and her son is going to become a part of the master's household. He's going to be the firstborn of Abraham. He's going to be, right, him and his dad are going to be tight. And, right, and Ishmael's going to grow up and he's going to inherit all of the stuff. But Hagar's just going to lose him. Hagar's going to lose him to the patriarchal household that she's part of. She's going to lose him to his father and to that whole system, and she's going to still be a slave. Sarah has been very clear that just because Hagar gives birth to the firstborn doesn't change her status at all. She's still servant. So in some sense, the assumption would be that her son is going to be born, and it's just going to perpetuate the system that keeps Hagar in slavery. So when the messenger comes and says, no, Ishmael's going to be a fighter. He's going to be battling his whole life. He's not going to be a good little daddy's boy. Maybe Hagar's really excited about this. Maybe Hagar says, great, someone's going to be on my side. And yeah, he's going to be fighting, but maybe if I train him right, he's going to be fighting for me. Maybe I'm going to get an ally out of this situation. So maybe the message she hears is, go back and train your boy to fight. And in some ways, this is similar to Mary's situation. Not a perfect parallel, but it's enough, right? So the angel comes to Mary and uses words like throne and reign and sovereignty. They're very political words. Even when the angel says your child will be son of God, that's a royal title in Mary's world, tying the political and the religious together. So in some ways, the angel is also saying to Mary, go back and train your child to fight the system, because you're living in evil times, right? And we need a warrior here. That's your job. Which means, of course, that Jesus' actual life and certainly his death would have been quite a shock to Mary. She had expectations. She knew what she wanted. She wanted a political Messiah. And Jesus' life and death continues to be a surprise. Even 2,000 years after it happened, it continues to be a surprise for people who are looking forward to a sword-carrying Messiah. But it fits well with the Hagar story. God sends a messenger, but this messenger only has a message. What a disappointment. It would be nice if the messenger had been carrying Excalibur, right, to give to Hagar, to give to Ishmael, to defeat all of his enemies, and he would become, right, He-Man or whatever. Or maybe the messenger could have brought the secret map to the ring of power, right? Maybe even like bread. Would have been nice if, the messenger at least brought bread. Instead, the messenger brings what is mostly an unwelcome message. Go back. Put up with it. And God has a plan for your son, so you need to survive. And God makes good on this promise. Tradition tells us that Isaac, Sarah's son, goes on to be the father of the Jewish people. Today, there are 14 million Jews in the world. But Ishmael goes on to be the father of the Arab people. And today, there are 400 million Arabs in the world. Hagar wins. I love both of these stories. Because, well, it's always great to have angels rescuing folks, but also because of the ordinariness of the people. People who are like us, but not. But they are more like us than not. They have in their lives these very rare, interruptions, these very rare times when God comes and is very clear, but mostly they are just getting by. They recognize that they are beloved by God even when they are alone. God is still there. Amen. So our final song is Comfort, Comfort, Ye My People. And one of the verses, second or third, I don't know, starts out, hark the voice of one who's crying in the desert, which traditionally is from Isaiah. So we think about Isaiah, or you might not. But I invite you today, as you're singing those words, to think about Hagar, the voice of one crying in the desert.